Now, here's the next thing. What makes up a team? So this is the distinction of team, two or more individuals coordinating action to create a different future. That's the distinction of team. That's what we can use functionally to describe it. But what are the parts of it? Now, these parts are really critical. I'm going to go through these parts, and not only are we going to use these parts to identify the teams that we're on, but more importantly, we're going to use it to assess the teams that we are on. When we look at these three parts, they're going to give us an ability to see how coordinated we are, or how high functioning we are. High functioning teams have very deep and strong or similar parts that I'm going to go into. Dysfunctional teams don't, and I'll give you examples when we go into it. So the parts of a team, and these parts again are fundamental in nature. It doesn't matter if I'm talking about a spousal pair, a family, a company, or you and the teller at the gas station. Three parts. The first part is a shared background of experience. Now, that should sound familiar. What else required a shared background of experience? Think about it. Most of you, because you got 100% on the quiz at the beginning of this lesson, are spitting this out really quick, right? Now you can see why holding these distinctions at the top of your head are so important, because they build on each other. A shared background of experience is critical to be able to have a common language or be able to communicate. That's why it's the fundamental piece of a team. If we don't have a shared background of experience, it's impossible for us to coordinate action with those people. If we can't coordinate action, it's not a team. So in order to have a team, you first have to have a shared background of history or a shared background of experience. Now, on a most fundamental level, that's just sharing language. Now, when you think about it on the highest level, when you think of my SEAL team, we had spent almost, it was 2 years of training, another year of operating before we went off to war. So 3 full years where our full purpose in life was to create an absolutely bulletproof background of experience. So much so that I could know what one of my teammates was doing simply by how they moved, not how they spoke or how they gave me a symbol, simply by how they moved, because we had shared so many experiences in so many different domains that I could read their mood, their behavior, and their intentions simply by their actions, right? So on one end of the spectrum, you simply need it to communicate. On the other end of the spectrum, at the highest level, the highest functioning teams, you have such a shared background of experience that you can make decisions based simply on someone's movement or their actions. The next piece of it is common concerns. What I mean by that is our concerns dictate our obligations, and our obligations dictate our focus, our attention, and our actions. Right? By being humans, we have certain obligations. Right? One of the obligations of being human is I have to fuel my body. If I don't fuel my body, I will eventually wither away and die. So I have a concern around eating. Now, being able to have a common concern is important. Say I have a team, I'm going to talk spousal team, husband, wife. So my concern is to be at the peak physical fitness. Well, actually, that's not going to work. Let's say, and this is more reality, my wife has the concern to be at peak physical fitness, and she is, and it's a beautiful sight, right? So her concern, her obligation is the same as mine as a human. She has to fuel her body with food. I do too. Her concern is to be at the peak of physical fitness, and my concern is to enjoy my consumption of food the most. Right? So common concerns. We have the common obligation of needing to eat, but we have different concerns. She wants performance. I want joy of food. How do you think our time trying to choose a restaurant go out's going to go? Right? I want beer and steak, and she wants to eat healthy, clean, and exceptionally performance oriented. Right? You could see how, as a team, it would be a bit dysfunctional if our concerns were so varied around a specific obligation. So that was a really simple example, but it applies no matter what. It applies if we're talking about a spousal pair or a company. If an employee in a company's concern was just to make money at all costs, and the concern of the company was to retain clients for as long as possible, you could see how there might be a disconnect where all I'm going to do is leverage you for every dollar you have, which means you probably are going to go to somewhere else, and that's not going to line up with the concerns of the company of retention and client service. So when it comes to parts of a team, we have shared background of experience, and then we have common concerns. And the last one is a shared desired end state. And desired end state is probably a term you've never heard. When I say desired end state, that's a specific term that we use to describe goals or objectives, but in a much more effective state. And we're going to go deep into this in a future lesson. But when I say desired end state, what I'm talking about is, what does the future feel like when we're successful? Not how we're going to get there, not the objective or the goal, but what does it feel like? Being able to have clarity on what that feels like is what's going to provide us with direction and the power to get there. And like I said, we're going to go into almost a full lesson simply on desired end states here in the future. So going through these parts of a team, we have shared background of history, of common concerns, and we have shared desired end state. Let me use a very personal example around dysfunctional shared desired end states. So this is Thanksgiving when I was a kid. And this was every Thanksgiving when I was a kid. My mother's side was all Italian, so we had these big Italian dinners for every Thanksgiving. And every Thanksgiving, we went to Aunt Nell's house. So Aunt Nell was married to Uncle Joe. Aunt Nell's desired end state, so the future that she wanted to create for the family, was one in which everyone felt fulfilled, full, happy, and connected. Right? And she would tell that. And that's what she did. Like, she produced the environment where there's amazing food. There's the opportunity to share and connect over that food. Uncle Joe's desired end state was always the same, and it was to watch football and get drunk. Every Thanksgiving, regardless of what was going on, Uncle Joe was drinking and watching football. Now you can see how Uncle Joe's desired end state of football and beer, right, self-satisfaction, did not line up with Aunt Nell's desired end state of producing fulfillment and connection with the family. You can imagine how many arguments that I had to witness between the team of Aunt Nell and Uncle Joe, and I'm going to add the word dysfunctional team of Aunt Nell and Uncle Joe, every Thanksgiving when he was sitting in front of the TV drinking beer, getting drunk, and she was slaving in the kitchen trying to create the amazing experience for the family. So these three things are what are going to dictate a team, right? They're the parts of a team: shared background of history, common concerns, and desired end state. Now we can look at these three things and also assess the functionality of a team. The teams with extremely high shared backgrounds of experience, think of my SEAL platoon that spent 3 years establishing very specifically in training shared backgrounds of experience, versus some team that just got thrown together and they don't even speak the same language. Common concerns, right? The obligations that the individuals of the teams feel, or the team as a whole has, and how their concerns relate to those obligations. And finally, the future that the individuals in the team desire to create. Those three things, the more common they are, the higher functioning the team. The less common they are, the lower functioning of the team. So when you go into a future exercise, not now, but at the end of this video, we're going to look at different teams in your life, and you're going to assess how similar these parts of a team line up. So you can start to get an idea of where your teams are going wrong, which gives you the ability to focus on it. And what tool do you think we're going to use to focus on it? Culture change, right? You can see how these build now. We have now a formula: environment, choices, actions, assessments, to be able to use that formula to start addressing differences in background of experience, common concerns, or desired end state.